Welcome everybody, episode 34 of the Sunset Session brought to you by FlowerHire. I'm Dave Belsky, your host. We have an amazing guest, Damian Solomon. Thank you, Damian. Damian does a lot of different things. Runs Plant Geek Consulting. He runs King Solomon Nutrients. He runs cultivation for an up-and-coming MSO called Your Way Cannabis, and advises countless operators on how to grow cannabis at scale. We have so much to cover today, but thank you very much for coming in.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I know we've been talking about it for a while, so.
I know. I told you. You told me you wouldn't do it unless I sparked up with you.
Unless we smoked weed on the show, exactly. So, there we go. You know, I've been watching that. What is it? That hot sauce interview show. Hot Shot, I think it is, or what is it? Hot Ones, where they make a meat progressively hotter.
Oh, that's a great show.
Sauce.
I watch that with my kids, actually.
So yeah.
Yeah, they get into that, and then my daughter thinks she can do it, but she definitely can't. You know, every single
we're
time.
Gonna try it in a couple of weeks. We're gonna get our friends together and see how we do. But
so how long? So you've been a lifelong fan of the plant, and you got into big agriculture originally, you know, in your career, and talk to me about what you did, and then when you decided to take your talents into cannabis.
Yeah, you know, I went to school for agriculture, and then I started to work for a Dutch company growing tomatoes in a high-tech greenhouse. And so I was always attracted to agriculture. I grew up in Yuma, Arizona, God's country. And
is it? I don't know.
In July. You know, so I've always been around agriculture, so I knew that's what I wanted to do as a career path. But I wanted to do like orchid breeding. So I started getting into hydroponics classes in college because I knew that was going to be an important part of like plant growth and growing plants. And so I started taking hydroponics classes, and we started talking about like crop production, and it just like blew my mind what can be done in greenhouses with plants.
Right.
And so
it's a plant factory.
It is 100%.
Yeah.
It's like giving the plant everything it needs to optimize plant growth. And so yeah, you know, I started working for a Dutch company right out of college, you know, trained by master horticulturalists in large-scale hydroponics, greenhouses, controlled environments, really high-tech setups.
Well, cut flowers was big in Southern California until it became unprofitable in like the 2000s or late 90s, right?
Yeah, it was like in the 90s. So like along the coast of Carpinteria by Santa Barbara, there's a lot of greenhouse agriculture there. It was predominantly like roses, gerbera daisy, what is it, Asiatic lilies, things like that. And then the labor started to get expensive, so that all moved to South America. And then a lot of those growers were looking for other crops to grow, and that's why, like, you know, Santa Barbara is so great, such a great place to grow greenhouse cannabis.
There's more cannabis grown in Santa Barbara County in that area than anywhere in the world at the moment, right? And so you would learned agriculture in the commercial greenhouse space, and obviously in California right now, there's millions of square feet of greenhouse dedicated to cannabis. And over the country, you know, millions of square feet of greenhouse and more coming, even in parts of the country that you wouldn't expect it, you know, like the Midwest. Like there's big greenhouse projects in the Midwest right now. So how much like cultivation square footage have you actually like advised on in cannabis in the last decade?
Within North America, I don't know, probably
20 million square feet.
Something like that collectively.
And you know, for a while, obviously cultivation was underground. You didn't have access to certain technologies or process or facilities to grow at scale. You know, how mature has commercial cannabis cultivation gotten in the last 4 or 5 years?
You know, as growers are now starting to adopt more like, you know, processes, procedures, and transferring that knowledge from commercial agriculture, because, you know, you have to understand, like a lot of food crops, you have low margins. You have to be really efficient in all your operations. But you can apply those same efficiencies over to a different crop, right, with cannabis. And then that's where it makes it really interesting, especially now where you have price compression, you have inflation, your growing costs are going up, and you're getting less money for your pound. Producers have to be efficient, right? And that's going to be like reducing costs, looking at, and not trying to reduce costs in a way that you're going to affect the final quality of the plant, but to find better methodologies, right? Better technology, better implementation of just better processes, help drive it as a business. You'd be making ice cream,
right? Well, it has to. It has to be treated like a business because it's taxed, and you have to be able to have your margins to continue to invest, pay your staff, and stay viable in a very 100%. Competitive market with tons of price shifts and all that. So, I've seen over the last 5 years of supporting the growth of the industry, through talent. There's a lot of big, ambitious infrastructure projects in cannabis on the cultivation and manufacturing side. And there's some facilities that have been able to hit production targets, scale out to hundreds of thousands of square feet, a footprint, and hit their continual harvest goals. There are those that have. What are the biggest difference makers in the facilities that actually can pull it off?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think what you're going to see is just like the ones that have implemented the basics, right? When you look at just what it's going to need to be profitable at a large scale, you want to look at those being able to have good systems in place, good processes in place, things that you can use to help mitigate issues early, because shit's going to always happen, but you need to have a system in place that catches those early. You're able to find a solution, data driven. Like, it has to all be there. And there's some good companies out, and I think the ones that have been able to survive, some of them have been able to because they have deep pockets and they're weathering the storm. But I think just as people get smarter, you get a transfer of more business people and business minded people, but that love cannabis, right? We owe a lot to the legacy industry to getting us here, but it doesn't mean that we have to be from the legacy industry to be, to be an advocate of the plant.
Sure.
To love weed and to be able to want to push the industry forward in any way, whether it's cultivation or branding and marketing or sales or IP or some type of computer software program or anything, right? It's like,
well, it's a whole
do better.
The cannabis industry has so much breadth to it, because there's cultivation, manufacturing, retail, and not to mention all the ancillary businesses that sell to that, right? So the industry needs people with their heart and values in the right place in order to take their talents and help figure this thing out, right? So in terms of like the nutrients business, like this is the best swag because it fits my head. King Solomon nutrients. It's your own proprietary blend, like, how used by operators like MSOs and elsewhere. Like, how is it going?
It's going good, and that was one of the things, like when I was doing consulting in the industry, one of the biggest challenges that I saw across most operators, and this was all throughout Canada, operators on the West Coast, East Coast, the Midwest, was that there wasn't a strong understanding of irrigation management or irrigation management practices, and that included having good fertilizer use, right? Like, it's not that the hydro-store brands won't grow good weed. They'll grow great weed at scale, but when you're now looking at being able to go from 100 square feet to 100,000 square feet, you can't spend the type of money that you're spending on the hydro-store brand. So you need to look at more commercially viable options, right? And at the same time, a product like mine was custom designed for optimizing plant growth. So it's going to give the plant 100% of what it needs. It's not that because mine's lower cost that you're giving up on quality or content or purity or whatever, right? In fact, we're seeing that a lot of my customers are reporting higher yield, better potency, higher terpene numbers, just faster
and a
plant
more cost-effective fertilizer.
And something that's more in line with traditional horticulture, right? You don't have to have a cannabis tax on everything.
Right. I mean, ain't that the truth?
We just wanted to get better products for better tools for better results. That's it.
Yeah. So in my lane, what I've seen, especially in the last several years, is what's really developed is there's this huge demand for cultivation talent.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, people that can run a facility at scale to hit goals, and whether it's in a controlled environment, right? Whether it's indoor, greenhouse, and I think that it's interesting because cultivation is the biggest employment growth driver of cannabis.
Yeah.
Right? Most people don't talk about that. They think it's retail, but it's not, because every state industry being vertically integrated with no interstate commerce, that's where it starts, right? And the more and there's an incentive to start there, because in the first decade of a legal market, or first 5 years, like the price of flower is high. Like if you can consistently get quality product to market, like you're going to have a decent footprint, a decent business to build from, right?
100%.
So we've tried to we're going to be working to help bring careers in cultivation mainstream, because there's such fast track career growth, right? There's you can get a job in cultivation, and if you're a leader and you're a good worker and you're passionate about the work that you do, in 6 months you can be a supervisor, you're running your own shift, your own facility in a year or two. And we've been seeing that, where people we talked to 3 years ago that weren't necessarily qualified enough for some of the manager and director level roles that we work now are.
Right.
And so what would you say if I think I might like being a grower, I think I might like being a cannabis cultivator, what do you think, if how would you describe that, and who would be right for that type of job?
I think that it's just anybody who has passion, right? I mean, I think again, it's one of those things where it's good if you have some growing experience for cannabis in the past, but that doesn't mean that you can't learn some of the the nuances, right? Especially when you start to implement technology on top of that allows you to overcome some of the challenges. Because one of the things that we would see is there's a lot of fantastic weed growers out there that grow great weed. They get to the level where they're producing great weed every day, right? They can have great crops, they can have not so great crops, but then why is that happening? How do you implement processes to overcome that, or to have just a management system to be able to help them get better? So I think anybody who is driven by data and process driven for the basic stuff, and then you can still implement that with people who understand the plant, right? I think being able to find that, and I think it's going to be great for you guys to get into the cultivation support side of things too, because
we're here.
It's not only with cannabis, you see just controlled environment agriculture in general. So leafy greens, lettuce systems, indoor food production systems. Well, that's booming. So
it's booming, and it's interesting.
You need that talent.
When a company that we're working with is open to not having cannabis cultivation experience, that's what they want. Those leafy greens, organic foods, greenhouse oriented at scale, right? But you hit on something. There's a passion for the plant. There's an artistry, but there's also a data and a numbers and a following process thing that's important, especially
that's the business part.
As you move up the ladder, right? As you become someone who's running a facility producing tens of millions of dollars of wholesale value, you got to be able to understand what your goals are and look at it, work in Excel, as well as be a man or woman of the plants, right? Do you think that most large facilities have their plant person, their whisperer? There's going to walk through a bay and be okay, this one had too much sun, this one's too dry, there's something off with the nutrients perspective, and that sort of operations manager? Do you see that?
It's hard, it's difficult to find that. I mean, they're out there. There's people out there that can do that, but like you said,
it's bridge both.
It's just difficult to find that right person, because what you see a lot in I know you're aware of this as well. You just high turnover rate still in cannabis, right? So one of the positions is cultivation director or cultivation manager. You see that position flipping all the time.
Well, that's also one that gets poached.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
So, because
there's opportunity.
High demand. Yeah. And I think just being able to find somebody, like you said, who understands plants, who's a plant geek, who knows how to grow plants in a commercial scale, knows what metrics to look after, labor, energy, fertilizer costs, everything from the business side, but then also loves plants and knows how to grow plants, right? They can learn that cannabis portion of it, right? I mean, it's great if you can find somebody who has more traditional experience in cannabis to be able to transition over, and you can. There's a lot of professional people that loved weed early on. Yeah. But it's more difficult.
You have to be ready to continue to fine-tune your craft. And in California, there's some amazing artists that have created their strains and showcased their art over generations. Yeah. And there's a place for them to continue to work their craft, but in terms of being part of the legal market, that ability to continue to evolve and grow, and that sort of, business-oriented side as well, is important. And that actually is what I want to talk about next. Was like, California has been through a lot in its industry. It's still around. It's not going anywhere. But one of the things that happened at the end of 2021 is the price of, wholesale flower for quality greenhouse flower, smalls and mids, dropped to $200 a pound, sometimes less, right? And from holding strong at over 1,000 since basically the start of the legal market, right? And then you had all those Northern California growers have their plants come down, in their one harvest a year in October, November, when there's already a market with,
it's flooded,
price compression. And so it's an unfortunate story for the folks that have been living this lifestyle. But like, do you think that California, whether it's regulatory wise or whatever, could continue to find a way to help include these folks in the industry, or?
Yeah, it's going to be hard, because I think, you see there's some large farms, and now they're going to start issuing the big, going to start issuing the big licenses.
The million square foot plus.
Yeah. The commercial scale licenses. So I think you're going to start to see more of that. But I think, it's like any market, there's going to be niche market opportunities for somebody who does like really fantastic live soil organic weed. But there's not going to be a market for 50
it's a
of those
connoisseur
people,
market,
right? And it's going to be maybe in a certain regional area, Sonoma County or Santa Rosa or somewhere, where it's very regional, known for that. But again, I think it's going to be also a question of access. If they can open up more retail space and just get more access points to the weed, because everybody loves smoking weed, everybody wants to smoke weed. Let's give it to everybody and make it more accessible, and then you're going to then not have a bottleneck of all this flooded weed market, because you're actually going to be getting into people.
Right, California has like 2 retail per 100,000 people.
Yeah.
Oregon has like 16.
Because you're still like, how many billions of dollars is the illicit market worth? So who's smoking that weed? Let's get them into a dispensary, get more dispensaries, less taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. So for California to evolve, it's got to change its tax structure.
Tax structure,
and the regulatory. Open up more dispensaries.
Open up more dispensaries. The industry is clearly generating a lot of tax revenue. And I think that California will always grow in cannabis. If there ever is interstate commerce, like hello, Carpinteria, California, there's a market for what it is you do. You have Glass House, but there's so many other big grows right in that area, which is probably the nicest outdoor climate, and even greenhouse climate for growing any commercial agriculture in all of North America.
Yeah,
right.
Pretty premium.
Do you think that those growers, Humboldt and Mendo and Santa Rosa and Sonoma and Lake County, like if there is interstate commerce, you can get that like source origin, flower. I think like that could be a big waterfall moment for, some of that craft grow that, has been medicine really for a lot of people. And unfortunately, you want to finally figure out why it's medicine for some people. And I think hopefully there's brighter days ahead through things like that. But there's a lot going on in California right now to push to like drop cultivation tax, end cultivation tax, as part of the plight of those farmers that can't continue to sustain a viable business.
Yeah, like inflation's through the roof, growing costs are through the roof, prices are low. It's tough for the smaller guy.
Yeah.
And I think you'll see the ones that are great creative, like you said, the ones that can say, hey, like we're from a certain region, we have a certain legacy history, we have a story to tell. Let's tell a story through our products, through our weed, educate the people why we're special, and you build that niche following. Like those are the companies that are going to come out ahead. You have to be able to evolve with the times and say, how can I spin this into a positive way? And then that's just the evolution of it. So you're going to see some smaller people fall off. You're going to see some mid-sized people fall off. There's just going to be more consolidation. So the ones that can survive are now just going to pick up distressed assets. So you'll still see, and now it's going to be like cannabis 3.0.
And the consumer could end up winning through that process.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, right? But it takes a lot of money to survive that consolidation. And it's witnessing. But at the end of the day, like, I'd say running a cannabis company is not an easy job. Like running a grow is not an easy job. Running any company, let alone the challenges of cannabis, the lack of infrastructure and all those things. But joining forces with some of the larger groups, like it feels like if you've been blood, sweat, and tears for generations, it might feel impossible to reconcile. But it's still, there's security in that, and there's something where like actually having a growth path now that this industry is legal, it's worth joining forces with others and to do what you love and be able to be fairly compensated, not look over your shoulder, right? But I really appreciate you coming in today.
Awesome.
We have a big cannabis cultivation salary guide going out here soon. It's going to make some waves in the industry, I think, saying what we think certain levels of folks should be paid in cultivation, but you need that, right? Like this is the most highly sought after skill set that we touch, and ultimately it's not going anywhere. We need more people to take the plunge, get that job within a cultivation facility and work your way up. Because
it's the most important thing. It's the starting point, because that's
right. It's literally the plant that provides recreation medicine.
100%.
And everything else that is derived from it. So thank you very much, guys. Damian Solomon.
Thank you. Nice.